Good morning, everybody. I was just saying to myself, shall I do one more thing before coffee time? And I realized I was late. I am so sorry to keep you waiting. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Ribbon Candy Hooking. I'm Deanna. It's great to see you on this terribly snowy day. I don't know what you're getting over there. I hope it's not this. We were foolish enough to the school system was foolish enough to send the kids to school this morning and then immediately have them be picked up. So I had to pick up Teddy a little bit early so I could still run the show on a lot early. He was basically there for 2 hours, just long enough for me to shower, get him a bagel twist from Dunkin' Donuts, and go pick him back up. What a good use of time, huh? So I hope that you are doing well this snowy morning, Linda. It looks like you've got lots of snow too in New Jersey. That's what I figured. As you can see, I'm hiding out in Jocelyn's room this morning, and I am right next to the door, so I am fully expecting to be hit right in the chair sooner or later. What are the chances? It's 100%, isn't it? Both kids will be home in a minute. Joss is on her way now too. Mom, good to see you. Let me put on my reading comments glasses here. Good to see you, Karen. Good to see you from Black Forest, Colorado. Great to see you. Sunny right now, but expecting the snow a little bit later this afternoon. Yep. That's what we're getting, isn't it? That's what's on the menu. Martha, great to see you in Ontario. I have not forgotten about the buttons. Don't think that I have. I'm real. It's such a good feeling to be sort of catching up. I mean, I almost dare not say that, right? But I feel, and there's still a ton to do. But for a while, it was just suffocating. It was more than a ton, and now it's just a ton. So it feels good to be in a place where I can look forward to doing some projects again. Hopefully sooner rather than later. Joy, good to see you. Good morning, Heidi. Good morning. I'm looking forward to seeing you for the Pro McGowan class, whether it's tonight or Sunday. It's identical classes both days. It's like I'm running like a multiple personalities puppet show or something here with my many pairs of glasses. So I'm so excited for that tonight. I was working on that again, and it's really coming together in a nice way. I'm so excited to be paying tribute to Pearl McGowan because so many people, and me included, see her as like one of the great kingpins and pioneers of rug hooking, right? But beyond that, really the person who brought rug hooking back to the front of the crafting world and a visible place for people when it was right teetering on the edge of extinction. So she is like if there is a patron saint of rug hooking, certainly it's Paul. Paul McGowan is out there somewhere, but that's not who we're doing a class on. Pearl McGowan. I am so tired. I got no sleep last night, 2 sleeping pills, and I still didn't sleep like at all. Um, but it's going to be a great class, and it's going to be a fun class. And I have gotten so excited and invested in the aesthetic, right? The Pearl McGowan aesthetic, and both using it in a very literal way, but also using it in a very contemporary way. And that is the balance. The balance of this class is to get both of those things right for people who have completely opposite tastes. I'm super excited. Linda, great. Oh, Linda's saying hi to Heidi. How nice. Yeah, Linda, Heidi, you have a completely separate weather system, I'm sure, right? Because you're not only are you so far away, you're so far ahead in your day. Cheryl, great to see you. Linda in Massachusetts, great to see you. Crystal, great to see you. Oh, here comes Teddy. Get ready for a slam in the chair. It's coming. I'm like a prophet, right? Hey, Ted, do you want to say hi?
Just wanted to know, I forgot my phone.
Okay, I'm live. Do you want to say hi? There he is. There he is, saying his good morning. You gonna go have a quiet time in your room while I run the live show? Excellent.
But also one thing, what's my phone number?
I don't know what your phone number is. I'd have to look it up in my phone. Does anybody really know? Do you know anybody's phone number anymore? I mean, I know that I don't. I know my own, and I don't even know the home phone anymore. Isn't that awful? It's in my phone. Oh man, Tara, good to see you and good chatting with you this morning. Chrissy, happy coffee time. Great to see you. April, great to see you. Magby, great to see you in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Carol, hello. Looking forward to. Oh, this was it. You asked about this. I was thinking it was a Pro McGowan class. I am really tired. Good to see you and you figured out how to log in so you can leave comments. Isn't that great? Catalina, good morning. Good to see you. Joan, good to see you. And Courtney, all the buddies coming in. Kirsten, you are awake. Great to see you. I'm so glad. Jill, good to see you. Rainy in Virginia. Oh man, Magby, you're getting the weather, the wintry mix, right? The wintry mix. That's just a way of saying there's some precipitation. We don't want to commit, but it's probably something in between. Oh dear. Dave, great to see you. You're waiting for your coffee to perk. I hope it's soon. Cindy, great to see you in Colorado. Cats Gallery, hello, good morning. Yes, please, thumbs up. Lisa, oh, thanks, Lisa. He loves to put his little face on the camera, and it's nice when he's normal too. Nancy, good to see you. It's getting warmer there. Well, I think we are on our way to seeing it get a little bit warmer, right? It's just that today's just a little bit of a throwback to winter. It's thrown me, it's thrown the school system for sure. But you get what you get and you don't get upset, right? It's just the way that it is. It is March. We thought it was coming in like a lamb, going out like a lion. It's coming in like a lamb and going out like a yeti, I guess, with all this snow. But we are only early into the month, thank goodness. And anything can happen yet, right? Oh, Crafters Grimoire, good morning. Good to see you. So, in anticipation of doing the Pearl McGowan show tonight, and on Sunday, identical show. So log on to either, log on to both, or watch the recorded show afterward if neither date is good. In anticipation of that, I have been looking at a lot of Pearl McGowan stuff, a lot of Charlotte Stratton, a lot of my heirloom rug catalogs, a lot of Ruggers Roundtable by Mildred Sprout. Sorry, it's going to be rough today. I'm going to have to take a nap before class tonight, without a doubt. House sitting in. Oh, okay, wait a minute. House sitting in Torrington. Is that Connecticut? Oh, Heather, you're in Torrington. Snowy and enjoying my friend's house. How fun is that? How fun is that? I realized, I knew intellectually, my brain knew that I had this volume. It actually says camper hand forms. This must have been for camping, whatever they call them, guides, whatever, counselors. But now it is filled with 15 years of Mildred Sprout, and I think that it's just extraordinary to own every copy, starting with volume 1, issue 1, because although, I have all Pearl McGowan's letter service, I have a lot of ephemera stuff that is, just reading your comments, that is so interesting and really of its time, isn't it? That's the thing I love about having these periodicals, having them safe and being able to share them here. Let me bring you in a little bit. It's such a moment in time. And, when I think about it in terms of building context for us, when I'm reading some of this, and I'm going to share this in today's episode, that's what we're about to do, it just occurred to me, and I'd love your opinion on this too, it just occurred to me that thinking about women when did this start? It's like early 1960s. First of all, let me show you. I have a good screen share for you here, and I have volume 1 right here. Oh, there's the logo, and there's volume 1. So volume 1 is actually 1955. So you can see at the top, Ruggers Roundtable, an exchange of ideas for ruggers. 10 issues per year, so that they leave out the summer months. $2 for that, right? Amazing. And she's in Hollywood, California. That was my throat catching, not your connection. This begins in February 1955, volume 1, number 1. Isn't this beautiful? This little form that would have come in the mail. So sweet. There's like a little pelican, little stork. Maybe that's symbolic of delivering the first issue, right? The first issue of the first volume. But when I thought about, good morning, Lorraine, good to see you. When I thought about context-wise, middle century, right, 1955. So people in 1955, women would have had, I would assume, a very heavy, like, home ec background, right? And we've already discussed this. People were so much more capable then of doing everything, weren't they? There was none of this, I can't do anything, not even sew on a button stuff, right? That just was not part of life. At that time, they were super capable, but they were much more familiar with using a needle, right? Using a needle for sewing, darning, sewing machine, anything needle related was much more familiar. Now, there were people who were using hooks for crocheting, doing some knitting, doing some other crafts. But when rug making becomes very, very popular, has its mainstream sort of renaissance as a result of Pearl McGowan and the amount of teachers who were certified at that time, and the way that it spread like wildfire as a practical hobby, and also as a great source of pride, with hundreds of women just constant in the pages of this Ruggers Roundtable, just constant announcements of this library, this women's group, this charity, this banquet, this library, having rug hooking shows. Just endless and constant. Can you imagine how nice that would have been? It is so few and far between at this point, as we always lament. But when I think about that woman of 1955 reading these issues, right? Reading her newsletter when it comes 10 times a year, asking very specific questions, as we're about to find out, versus a person coming into it. I just turned 50 last week, so me coming into it, I really think, from what I can see, that when I was, and I went to Catholic school, so maybe that was different. I was right at the end of the era of people who were given home ec and who were taught to sew at school and were shown pots and pans and how you cook and what is a saucepan versus a frying pan, and basic things like that. We got those. We got them in high school too, now I think of it. The boys automatically took woodworking and the girls automatically took home ec, and it wasn't a conversation. It was just a mandatory class that they gave you. It appeared on your schedule and you had to appear in the classroom. And I just think it's a funny thing, because thinking about how the current generation, if people are picking up rug hooking now, what kind of a background and what kind of a tool set are they approaching the craft with? It's going to be very different. The women from this era, the Mildred Sprout era, right, asking questions of her in Ruggers Roundtable, they are asking very specific questions because their skill set is almost complete, right? They have not held a rug hook and they have not done hooking, but they've held a lot of other tools that are similar, and they are in the habit of and in practice with making do and figuring it out on your own, right? So when they ask a question, it's going to be very specific, and it's so interesting to see the angle of these questions versus now. The questions that we get now are really entry questions, which does not mean that they're pointless, stupid, worthless. No question ever is. It's always worth asking the same beginner questions thousands, hundreds of thousands of times. And those of us who know the answers have the privilege of being able to help out and give a good answer, right? But it's just, there's such a difference, right? There's such a difference in how one approaches as a beginner. Years later, decades later, we have lost so much in terms of what people do and what people's backgrounds are as far as being crafty / resourceful in that regard, right? Home ec included budgeting too. Oh, interesting. See, I never had that. That explains a lot. That explains a lot. I've gotten in so much trouble over the years with my money. Boomer's retirement. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? Karen, just like on Facebook now, but immediate. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. So it's a different world. And it's such a charming world. When I go through this book, and it's hard to peel away from it. So I'm not going to yet. This is a great bedtime book for me. That really says a lot about my character, doesn't it? But I have this volume out. This is the entire span, right, of 15 years of newsletters from Mildred Sprout. And I've only just scratched the surface, and I'm going to take you with me through this, not all in one day, but I just want to tiptoe into it. It is so interesting. It is still interesting. It is still relevant. It's still informative, but something that this volume has that not every book does have nowadays is charm, that vintage charm, right? It's just the feel of it wrapped up in a bow. The way that Mildred answers questions is so kind, patient, thoughtful. Just the manner is just lovely, right? I wish that everybody could still operate with this kind of a voice and lead with this kind of forthcoming helpfulness, right? Instead of keeping lots of secrets, being suspicious of other people, trying to prevent other people from getting a leg up. Very, very helpful and forthcoming. Martha says, I hated home economics in school. The teacher made me stand in the hall because I couldn't cut fabric with the right-handed scissors they supplied. You are a lefty. Those stories are awful, aren't they? I mean, they really are. It really does something to you when you're being punished for being left-handed. It is such a thing. I am so sorry to hear that. That is such a thing. So many left-handed stories out there. I know. I get them, and I always think, I guess I'm very lucky that I was a righty. I never had that because I'm sure the nuns would have had something to say to me as well. So 15 years of Ruggers Roundtable. And again, what a privilege. I know that there's a Mildred Sprout document. I didn't have time to check this morning on eBay right now. And it is a lot. It's like 100. But I have to say, again, I have not checked for its completeness. But if it is the entire course, the entire 15 years of Ruggers Roundtable, then I would say that would be worth the money. Because this, I mean, this is obviously endless. It's endless reading. It's many books put into one. It's endless charm. So this issue starts out with just to get the feel of what this is like, and please jump in as often as you can to let me know, particularly when she's giving advice, if you have, because this advice was given in 1955, if you have other ideas or if you have figured other things out along the way. Certainly our products have changed. Many times our technique has changed. The basic core, right, of the information, the skeleton is all correct. But sometimes we need to substitute words for different products, or sometimes there are easier ways of doing something. So this is all a source of conversation. So I fully expect and hope that you'll join in. What she does in every Ruggers Roundtable is she first does a little introduction. And this is how she introduces. There she is. Come on in. There she, oh my gosh, you made it through the snow. That's almost a Barry Manilow song. He did I Made It Through the Rain, but you made it through the snow.
Not rain.
All right. So don't make a lot of noise though, I'm live.
All right.
So she introduces, because I put the, stop. I just said don't make noise. I'm running a show, okay? Be invisible. So she starts volume 1, number 1.
Goodbye.
I love you, sweetie. With this introduction. And this is the very first of the first, right? This is how she introduces what will become a 15-year project for her. Here come the plows. So many letters have been sent in asking questions about hooking that while I would like to answer each one personally, it finally becomes physically impossible to write detailed letters to every inquiry. Many times the questions are so familiar, the same explanation will do for more than one. Questions will be answered which are of general interest as space permits. The more we exchange ideas, the more pleasure and successful results all will have. Tell me about your ideas, what you are doing that can be passed on to others. Let's make this a truly Ruggers Roundtable. And it's funny because before I knew it was Ruggers Roundtable, 2 years ago I started a group for people who work in rug hooking called Rug Hooking Roundtable, right? That's still a Facebook group. I just have not had time to contribute to that or steer it ever since. But the idea of a roundtable, as you know from King Arthur's court, is that no one person is in charge or any more important than any other person. And I love that as a starting point, right? It's a round table. Everybody has an equal voice, and everybody's voice is just as important as the person sitting next to them. And I think it's just a sign or a symbol of her good nature to even name the periodical the Ruggers Roundtable. If you have hooked an interesting rug with pleasing results, let's hear about it. One of the greatest pleasures that I have received in my teaching and contact with ruggers is in knowing so many wonderful people. It seems that those who create and get pleasure from making a colorful rug for their home just don't have time to be unhappy. That's a nice sentiment, isn't it? So, if you have not hooked or braided a rug, why don't you join the thousands that are dying, and she spelled it with an E, to make a rug? I think that's a lovely introduction. And so she starts every newsletter, because it's just a few pieces of paper, with questions and answers. And like she's saying, she's trying to choose questions that apply to many people so that the answer doesn't just fall on one person's ears, but many people. It's just the way it is, isn't it, in any job. When I was a tour guide and people, I would run the same tours again and again, Canada, up and down the California coast, through New England, out west in the national parks. And you'd think people would say, oh, you know the answers to everything. That's unbelievable. And it's not that. It's just that people will always ask the obvious questions, right? Rarely do you get a question that you have never heard before when you've been working it for a decade, right? You've heard all of them. What elevation are we at? Is there a bathroom at the next stop? It's always going to be the same, and the same thing with crafts, right? You can fully expect what the anticipated questions will be. So this is what she tries to hit first. So she says, one of the questions is, how can I judge how much material will be needed for my hooked rug? That's probably the first one, right? And her answer is, I estimate the surface to be covered and allow a ½ pound plus per square foot additionally. That is a very tricky answer. I think now the kind of staple answer is a lot of people say 3 times. If you are hooking, for example, Santa's robe, 3 times the amount of surface space of Santa's robe is what you need. I always say 4 times, just to err on the cautious side. You can always have little strips left over for your next hit or miss project, but it's hard to sort of regroup when you've run out of something and you need the exact same color. It's like buying yarn. It's hard to get that dye batch exactly right a second time. So I always say 4 times more is a safe measure, but they used to do it more in pounds, and that goes back to how material was bought, right? So these are the kinds of questions that are asked when, and funny things like, how can I make each petal stand apart, right? Because this is the era of, and we'll get way more into this tonight with our Pro McGown class, this is the era of doing a lot with medallions and scrolls, florals and fruits, right? Cornucopias, all of these kinds of things. And the intention and the object was to hook something that was quite technical, right? And this is all we talk about this all the time. This is always a thing because this is post like Hutchinson era, post a lot of graphic and very antique rugs. But the look of this period, certainly the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, technical perfection was the goal for most people. So they're asking very explicit questions about how to achieve that, right? This is where most of the questions lie. And she goes into pages and pages about scrolls with little drawings and flowers and leaves that tell you just where to put the colors. Remember, paint by number as a toy and hobby came out in the year 1950. This is 1955. People are becoming more and more reliant, and they are more and more expecting people to tell them just how to do something. This is also the era of, have you ever found in old bookstores or do you collect any of those old hobby magazines about building and carpentry from this era? Because those also are very explicit, just how wide the piece of wood needs to be, just how long you need to cut it, just what kind of screw it needs to be when you go to the hardware store to ask for it. Very explicit directions, and the same thing with hooking. So lots of pages of what would have been very helpful diagrams about filling in colors. And not just that, dyeing, because so many people were dyeing. If you were taking classes with certified teachers, you would be using their dyed swatches, but you would also be learning how to dye with Cushing dyes. So this would be part of your world, and you would be very versed in this language of dyeing. Whether you are a dyer or not now, if you are and you're used to using the Cushing dyes, or any dyes, right? I use the Cushings, I use the Prochems, I use the Dharmas, I use anything. And they all have different sort of benefits and different qualities and properties. But when I think about the Cushing dyes, there are some that really stand out in my mind, like bronze green, like mummy brown, like spice brown, like old rose and wood rose, that really there is no equivalent with any other chemical dye company. Those are so firmly fixed what they look like in my head. Strawberry. There's a bunch of them that are very, very different. And people had this language in their head. They had that visual in place for what exact color they were talking about. So for example, she puts a chart in place that says, the headings are rosebuds, leaves, scrolls, background, border. And then she gives you color breakdowns, Cushing language, like for red, you want to use, for the rosebuds, you want to use red, a little bit of yellow, for the leaves, bronze, bright green. And she really breaks it down as a chart to show you how to make 16 different swatches for really 2 different things, petals and leaves. And of course, your swatches within the swatch sets that you would be dyeing, there would be different intensities of color, right? Because for each swatch, you would get squeak out as many variations, kind of going ombre from dark to light as you could, so you had as many colors as possible in each leaf and in each petal. Very, very explicitly explained, which would have been so, can you imagine how helpful this would be as a rug hooker? And rug hooking has just come back in, and you hear about it and you sign up for a class and you start doing it. Maybe there isn't anybody who's giving a class near you, and this newsletter is it. imagine how relieved and happy you would be to be getting this and getting this kind of detailed information, because they're not going to have, well, they might have a book at your library. Charlotte Stratton's book is already out. Mildred does write a book. She writes several books on dyeing, but she writes a general rug hooking book too. But depending on where you lived, your library might not have these books, right? So you might just be winging it and really building your knowledge sort of library reservoir from these new letters, piecing it all together. So these would have been a lifesaver for so many people. And then she tells you at the end of each issue, so she was focused in that issue on a specific rose and a specific bud with the rose leaf, right? You wouldn't show like a water lily leaf with the rose, right? She does everything matched so that you can get going on your roses. Including the dyeing. And then she tells you what comes up in the next episode. And this is such a cliffhanger, isn't it? Can you imagine getting an issue of this, getting your newsletter, reading through all the questions and answers in the pages, and then getting to the end and finding out what will be in your next newsletter? Coming up soon, rug frames, how to make your own, pine cones, illustrated instructions for hooking, color selection, and hooking of fruit patterns. For hooking or pictures. So in other words, for making rugs or making wall hangings. How to design and make your own rug pattern. Rugs designed especially for children's rooms. And then again, more questions and answers of general interest. So cute. So I'm looking at the next issue. This is volume 2. And a question came up. Somebody asked, where can I get a pattern of a horse's head? And I like that right off the bat. It's a long question, and she describes the kind of horse's head that she would like to hook with the flowing mane. And Mildred gets right back on, and she says immediately, what's the company that she said? She said, a pattern with a horse's head similar to the one that you asked about is available from Modern Handicraft Inc. And that was in Kansas City, Missouri. And I think I have heard of this, but only on eBay, right? Now, I don't have anything from this company, but I can't imagine that they're still there. They're probably one of the many companies that got absorbed in the like American Thread Company, something like that, right? That got eaten up by much larger companies around that time. And she talks about how the pattern comes in multiple sizes. I think it is so nice that she suggested in other companies, right in the first paragraph of volume number 2, she suggested another company's product, right? Because she has her own product and she sells them. But she's not making the show about herself. She's making it about rug hooking. And I think that shows a very good sign of character, that she immediately demonstrates that she's willing to answer any question with the best of her information, which is vast and pretty complete, right? I think it just shows a really nice nature. Somebody asks a question about dyeing with black. And it's an interesting question because she says she keeps dyeing with Cushing black and it's not working out. And Mildred goes into a long talk about how if you're starting with a color, for example, like red, you're always going to have a different, if you have a different base than white, it's not going to come out exactly black. And she suggests that if you're starting with a red or crimson or maroon base or a purpley base, you need to over dye it first with green, right, which is the complementary color, the opposite color, to kind of neutralize that base, and then dye it black. So all of these interesting conversations. This is her picture of the rug frame, right? And she's telling you exactly how to build it. I can't imagine how many people at this time had this exact rug frame built to these specs exactly, right? I always try to share, Tara. I always do, because I think it always comes around. Paying it forward, right? But it's so funny. She talks about the screw eyes, what size they have to be, rollers, everything is exact. Super helpful. And then her focus in this issue is the hibiscus, which is very, very cute. I blocked off. Why did I block this off? There were some things I saw that I really wanted to share. This is interesting, I think. Somebody asks a question in volume 1, number 3. She said, Mrs. W. of Illinois, she asks, do you have a pattern that is a combination of hooked and braided rugs? Now, this is a question that comes up all the time lately. I've noticed this more and more often lately. And the answer from Mildred is, this is her answer. A round or oval rug is easier to add braids around than a rectangular one. Finish the edge of your hooked rug just as if you were not adding braids. So in other words, she's not saying to whip stitch it or do one of the fancy finishes that we would maybe go to now. She means to fold it under and like stitch it under very innocuously and invisibly, right? As they would have done then. As if you were not adding braids, twilled rug binding applied and sewn back as suggested, and then she gives a source to what page. She says use a curved upholstery needle, which is still very easy to get, to lace through the edge of the rug as you add the braid to the hooked rug. Now she's not actually saying how to braid, right? She's assuming that people being very capable from this period already know that part. So she assumes that they have a finished piece of rug hooking and that they have a braid, right? And that they're ready to go. So she actually gets into a conversation about how to braid in 2 sentences. And this would have been enough for many people at this time to understand with a curved needle, 2 sentences worth, what they needed to do to make this work. Because what she's describing is actually just sewing the braid on. She's not describing technically, actually, you know, when people make a braid rug, they hide the stitches, right? So that it's reversible and you can use both sides. That's not really what she's describing. And when you find often a hooked rug with a braided border, for example, in an antique store, when you flip it over, because it's not meant to be two-sided, because it's also hooked, you often see a lot of stitches there. And maybe they had read this from Mildred, and maybe they had just figured it out on their own, but you can clearly see the stitches because it's not done in that way that a braider would do, hiding all of those stitches inside the braid itself, right? There's a very particular way to do it. But she goes on to say that it is really interesting. She's recommending, right? This is like all in one page. She's recommending a pattern by Heirloom, and that was the company in Providence. She says Heirloom's Chatterbox, and we have looked at this image on Coffee Time. I didn't have time to find it this morning. Chatterbox is a squirrel on a limb with large leaves, and that makes a lovely center for a boy's room or a den. This kind of a center, what kind of a center did you have in mind? Flowers or animals? Question mark. Let me know if I can possibly help you. So not only is she giving some good advice about starting the braiding, but she gives a great example of the kind of pattern that would work, a circular pattern like the Chatterbox pattern, that would work as a good motif in the center and to braid around. It's also interesting, and it's not sexist because it's 1955, right, that she would say that would be good for a boy's room. I guess things for a girl's room, they were thinking more automatically about flowers and things like that, but a little animal for a boy's room would be, she thought, very appropriate. I thought that was super sweet. And there's many pages about pine cones. I'll tell you. Paula, good to see you. Crafter's Grimoire said, I remember seeing an oval rug with a braid all done in autumn colors with oak leaves and acorns. Childhood memory. What a beautiful rug. Autumn rugs are so beautiful. That has to be one of the great all-time genres of rugs, is the autumn leaf rug. But yeah, you know, you often do see the combo, and we talk about them a lot now. We see them a lot in our Facebook groups. One of the great, most popular variations at the moment is the velvet around the edge from Diane Collins at the Velvet Hook. Doing the velvet around the edge adds a beautiful lustrous frame. You know, there's so many things that you can do. This is something we're going to talk more about here too, adding braiding. And I am thinking about doing a class where we do a beginner's design, and then, for example, a month later is the second part, and we put the braid around. I thought that could be a very fun 2-part class for us where we learn both things at once, but give you a little bit of time to work on the pattern so that then we can add the braid and you're ready to go. And I thought that could be something fun and different. Let's see. The Chatterbox pattern is the pattern with a little squirrel. It's a squirrel sitting on a limb. And I remember it because it was such a funny name, and I thought about the kind of noises that you sometimes hear them make when they're upset or anxious to get snacks. But that's the Chatterbox, such a cutie. I'll have to pull out, because someone was asking in the Facebook group, somebody was asking about heirloom patterns because they had that beautiful red rug that my comment, and I certainly didn't recognize it. I'm not that good. But I thought this must be a Pearl McGowan, an heirloom. Somebody said it could have been a Edward Sands Frost. It could have been. I was just thinking about the larger catalogs that were very, very flower heavy, right, with central flower motifs. But I'm not sure that the conversation resolved itself, but I was going to check the heirloom catalog. I just haven't had time to do it yet. I have more than one heirloom catalog, too. They were a great company, and like Charlotte Stratton, like Mildred Sprout, they did designs that were quite similar to the Pro McGowan designs. I'm not saying that they copied or anything. I'm saying that that was the vogue at the time. That was what you would fully expect to find, and that was what you would want to hook too, right? So some more questions and answers. I pulled another one. Now this one is very interesting. The question is, Mrs. S of Wisconsin asks, where can you buy white material not too expensive? Isn't that the eternal question? It's either too expensive or too loosely woven. This is our problem. One does need white material for tinting the first two shades. So she's thinking about dyeing, and she's thinking about the most pale shades, the lowest intensity of a color, before you work the swatch set up and have those very dark intensities, right? And Mildred's answer is yes, it is difficult to sometimes find the white material. Much of this comes as trimmings from coat factories, and the supply is seasonal. Here are two sources that you might wish to contact, and she gives these two. This one I have never heard of. Let me know if you have. Berry, Berry Paper Stock Company in Taunton, Mass. And Duncan's Hook and Braid Shop, Firestone Boulevard, Downey, California. If any of these have, if you have any sources that can be of help to others, please let us know, and I will include their addresses. And then don't you just know the following issue in the first paragraph, right on top before she even gets into her little introduction. It's almost like a sort of addendum. She says where to get material, and she's underlined it by hand, not on the typewriter, but by hand. And she adds, in addition to the two addresses given in last month's Ruggers Roundtable, and she adds a bunch more addresses that people must have sent in. The Sunrex Company in Ashbury Park, New Jersey, Ashawag River Mills in Groton, Connecticut, Red River Rug Studio in Overland Park, Kansas, Quality Coat Factory in New Haven, Connecticut. That's definitely not there. Heller and Michelson Company in Providence, Rhode Island, Henry Wilder in Worcester, Mass., and Muriel Borden, Concord Street, Haverhill, Mass. Those people so forthcoming with help, right? They knew places, they sent it in, she immediately puts that at the top. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Honestly. There was another piece over here that I thought was interesting. Let me show you the image that I had for that. Karen says, I never did. Oh, Karen, that was you. Of course, that was you with that beautiful red rug. That is one of my favorite rugs that I have ever seen. Like, ever seen. I never did find the red rug pattern. Karen, I will look at my heirloom as soon as I can, and I'll look at all the other catalogs I have from that time. It's going to take some time. Oh, Caroline, good to see you. But we will find it. I have no doubt that we will find that exact pattern. It could also be Mrs. Harry Davis. She had far fewer patterns. I don't think I have a catalog of hers. I have the book that she wrote. We'll have to check that too. There's a few sources of people who produced sort of less original patterns, but it could certainly be them as well. I think it's probably not Garrett Bluenose, just the nature of their designs. It's not super similar to me in the way that it looks, but I will check the 4 or 5 American sources. It seems like it's got to be one of these, so I will not forget about it. It's an extraordinary rug, and we ought to know who designed it. Evie, hello, good to see you. You're at work now, but you wanted to hop on and listen. Oh, I'm so glad. It's nice to take a break, isn't it? So let me share this slide with you because this is the illustration that she drew for this next conversation. Let's see. Oh, no, those are the pine. Oh, I'm sorry. I should have shown you this earlier. Those are the pine cones. There was like 3 pages of pine cone talk. And you know, when I was looking at it, I was thinking, that's a lot of pine cone talk. And then I was thinking, this is so helpful. I mean, I'm not being facetious at all when I say, I can't get enough pine cone talk. You know, when you look at something like this and there's so much information, there's so many color ideas, there's so many tips, this is extremely helpful. It can't be enough, right? And that was in March that she was doing all that pine cone talk, which would have been helpful because people would have been working on designs that they probably hoped to put down on the floor a little bit later in the year, more toward autumn. So this is one of the conversations that comes up. She says, Ruggers, if you've been looking for a hook to use on your wider strips, this may interest you. Contact Mrs. Montgomery direct. And she's demonstrating this. She says, Dear Mrs. Sprout, this hook I use is my great aunt's. I find it much easier to use than the straight ones. It does not tire my arm and shoulder so much as I can rest my wrist on the edge of my hoop. This hook can be purchased from Harriet Montgomery, and this was in West Iowa, Oh no, that's the street. Urbana, Illinois. Sorry, Urbana, Illinois. These were $1 each. These hooks being manufactured then, and I thought, isn't that fantastic? I have a few of these hooks. I have not had huge success with them myself, but it just depends on the way that you hold your hook and what you're used to. Some people love these bent hooks more than anything. There was another question here where somebody said, Mrs. R of Canvas asks, how do you moth proof your rug woolens? I dissolve mothballs or crystals in the wash water. And Mildred's answer was Cushing's. Cushing's has a permanent moth proofing powder called Larva Sol, which may be added to the dye bath, or if no dyeing is necessary, may be a separate process. One package is 20 cents and is fast to light, washing, dry cleaning, rubbing, ironing, stripping, and seawater. That's the complete sentence. I didn't quite get that. One package will process 1 pound of woolens. Has anybody heard of this? I have so many vintage Cushing supplies, but I do not have Larvasol. I just thought that was interesting. I was wondering if I was going to get any feedback on that. I'll look at the thread as we go. So it's this kind of thing. Let me show you another image. It's just lots of conversations that are very, very helpful and very specific. And again, I still think that these are useful for us now. Things like this, this is volume number 1, issue number 5, and Mildred's showing 4 seats with fruit designs. And she tells you, the first one has apple, pear, grapes, bananas, plums, and cherries. She tells you what each one has, but she's encouraging you. You can buy her designs, but she's also encouraging you to try drying them. Crystal says Larvasol. Wonder if that's still available. That's what I'm wondering. It's such an unappealing name. I can't imagine what the packaging for that product looked like. It might be online. I didn't think to check, but it might be worth checking eBay for Larvasol. That's exactly how you spell it too. Good job, Crystal. It's bizarre, and it sounds grotesque, but it is necessary, and I'm sure it was a very useful product. So this is the kind of thing she does, and this kind of thing. Let me put this down. So cute. She does drawings like this throughout. So school opening. She reminds everybody school starts again. And the 2 months that they take off are the summer months with this newsletter. So June, July, she would take off, and that sort of makes up the 10 months of the year. Every other month she's busy. The fruit designs are adorable, right, Martha? So at this point, this issue is the coming back issue, and she says, school starts again. The children are going back to school. Many of us are going back to school too, to work on our rugs and learn more about hooking and braiding. And that suggests to me that because of just schedule and life in those days, I wonder if teachers would take a break from rug schools at this time during the summer months also. That would make a lot of sense. But I have no feel for the rhythm of life or this kind of thing because I'm living in the 21st century now, right? But it's interesting to think that this might have gone without being said at that time. So she welcomes everybody back and also back to rug school. There's a question that comes up a little bit later on that somebody says, and I was surprised by this answer, but pleased. Somebody says, Mrs. B of California asks, can rayon or nylon dresses, hose, or underwear be used in hooking? And our answer is yes. Many ruggers use rayon or nylon knot garments, knot, K-N-O-T. The strips have to be cut a little wider, possibly 3/16 of an inch or a 1/4 inch, depending on the weight of the material. It is my thought that these rugs would not absorb quite as much soil without showing, or keep their colors quite as distinctly as ones made of woolens. But I think it's wonderful that she gave an answer yes to that, because of course that opened up the playing field to a lot of people who I'm sure could not afford to buy just all wool to make these rugs. Snow is really coming down. Now for something completely different. Take a look at this. This is one of the cutest ideas I've ever seen. Get rid of that and let's bring this up. So here it comes. How to make a tin can TV stool or hassock. And Mildred says, have you been wishing that you could make a hooked gift for Christmas, but want something without too much hooking? A tin can TV stool might be your answer. And she talks about the materials that you would need. You would need 7 large juice cans that are about 4 1/4 in diameter and about 7 inches high. And this whole page on this article is about putting these tin cans together. And she shows you how to sew with muslin, how to sew kind of a sleeve for them so they don't knock together and make a tin can noise, right, when people put their feet up. So she cushions them individually. She shows you how to sew the cans together with that kind of flower configuration. And then she describes all of the sewing in real sort of painful detail. It's very explicit. And then she talks about the kinds of designs that you might want to choose for the top of your tin can TV hassock. Does it get any sweeter than this? I think this is absolutely beautiful. I wish I had more time because I would love to do this. She does suggest some patterns that she has: a pine cone, a pansy, a maple leaf, a morning glory, a rose, and some mixed fruit. And Carol says, tin cans, wonderful. They're naturally upcycled, reused items. And isn't that the truth? And it's nice to see people in this period, right, the post-war era, because it was the beginning of a very disposable time that we're still living in. It's nice to see ideas for people being thrifty, right? Because they wanted some distance from that thriftiness that they had to endure in the post-depression years, the World War I years earlier, and then the war years, right? All of that rationing and making do and letting things wear out. People would try to distance themselves from that. So it is nice to see examples of early recycling and repurposing. What did I put here? Oh, I marked something off. Someone was asking a question about thin gabardine, and she was saying not a good idea. And that still is a question that comes up a lot. Sometimes you see that very thin wool, and you know it's 100% wool. And if you're a beginner hooker, you can be kind of confused about why that wouldn't work, and it just simply doesn't work because it's too thin and it wants to fray. But that is the very kind of wool that you do want to use if you're braiding or thinking of adding a braided border. Also in Colombia, Heidi says, and Crystal says, I wonder what is in Larvisol. I wonder that too. Maybe there's a reason it's not sold in the U.S. and Canada anymore. I'm thinking absolutely the same thing. There must be a very solid reason. We probably have a similar kind of a product, but yeah, I agree with you. It would be a curious thing to look at what the ingredients on those were. It'll be fun to pin it down because I know someone's got a pouch of Larvisol out there. And we're going to end on this today. And Heidi says, in Belgium, I found a natural product. Oh, good. Well, these things work just as well, right? I have a bunch of my balls, garlands that I made with cedar oil infused in them, dropped it in with a little eardropper thing. And I have that machine that makes like a noise that gets the moths. So a couple of different things, but and I have those things too, the hanger things that I bought like a million of. And the smell has really gotten to me, but then it faded a little bit too. So far, so good. But yeah, I'm curious to see if anybody wants that information on making the tin can stool, let me know because I can always copy that page and post it somewhere. So I'm going to end on my last picture of today that I think is another very sweet picture. And we were talking about this already. It's a natural topic to go to. These autumn rugs, such a big part of the year, thinking about your autumn rug. And this is the first instance. This is volume 1, number 7. So this is October of 1955. This is the first time that she began with this brilliant idea of putting stencil or template pieces on top of the text, right? Because it is a small periodical. It's like it's like 2 pages, 2 pieces of paper, double-sided, right? So four pages of type, but only 2 pieces of paper. This is the first time that they started to print it with these templates on top. And how helpful that is, because they're not using up their precious real estate on the page, showing you pictures. This is really, really good. And she will continue to do this. Really smart. Sue says, remember, this was the generation that sprayed DDT. Yep, that's right, in the nursery. That's a great point. Absolutely. Times have changed, right? We are still fools in so many ways, but in other ways, some things are improving, right? Slowly but surely. At least we think they are. We hope they are. So let's return to that tomorrow. I have got to take a little bit of a lie down. I am really falling apart. But then I'll regenerate myself and come back full blast tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the people who've signed up for the Designing Like Pro McGowan class. We'll be looking at more of this kind of thing, but we will be doing a lot of designing ourselves and putting together designs that are absolutely beautiful, timeless, and as contemporary or as true to the Pro McGowan style as you would like. And according to your taste, right? You have to design things that are according to your taste, not mine and not Pearl. So, looking forward to doing that tonight. And then I won't be with you tomorrow, but I will be back for Friday night cocktail night. I'll think about whether I'm going to continue looking at Mildred or whether we'll look at something new, a new source or a new idea. I'll see how all that goes. I'll see how I'm feeling. I'm hoping I'm just tired and not actually getting sick or something really annoying like that. In any case, have a great rest of your day. Get some fun stuff done. Let me know how it goes. And if you need me, you know I'm at ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com. Otherwise, I'll either see you tonight. And remember, if you're not able to log on tonight, but you still would like to do the Pro McGowan class, it's $45. And as long as you sign up 15 minutes before, I'll have time to forward you the document with all of the pieces and things that I've drawn that will help you during class, but you also don't need them during class, right? We're just doing drawing exercises. And I want to remind you, if you're signed up, that although I always ask if people want to share what they've worked on, see what kind of success they've had with a exercise or game that we've just done, I will never call people out or ask people to show things. I never ever do that because I remember what it feels like being in class and being put on the spot, and it's not for everyone. I just saw a moth. It's not that kind of a moth, but still very ominous. So hopefully I'll see you tonight or Sunday when I run the same class, right? Same thing on Sunday. Have a great day, everybody. And I will see you on Friday if I don't see you sooner. Take care and thumbs up.